happens, there are two people in this room who know how old it is. Because I'm the caveman. Ugh. Thank you very much. My first ever cave drawing. How would I do? All right, not too good. It's pretty hard to draw on a cave, just so you know. It's bumpy. It's not like a piece of paper. So try it sometime. And my wife, of course, knows how old it is because she was there. She snapped the picture. So we have the caveman and we have the eyewitness. So we know how old it is because we were there. I hope there's a naughty little side of me that hopes there's an evolutionist in that cave right now looking at that drawing going, whoa, look at that, Marge. That cave drawing must be about 10,000 years old, right? Because they don't know, do they? I know because I was there. I drew it. The point is, we hear a lot of things on TV and in textbooks even that present things as if they're facts that are really just beliefs. Might be right, but they also might be what? Wrong, right? Let's do one more test just to make sure we get this. Fact or belief? Observable, then think about the words observable and repeatable, because for something to be a scientific fact, it has to be both observable and repeatable. What about this quote? The last dinosaur died 65 million years ago. Who thinks that's a proven fact? Raise your hand. Who thinks that's just a belief that might be a fact but might not be, right? It's a belief. It's somebody's belief. Because again, how old would you have to be to actually know that? Not only would you have to be about 65 million years old, you'd actually have to be there when the dinosaur died. Clunk, and he falls over. Yep, last dinosaur, he's dead. I just saw it happen. Then you wouldn't really know, right? But how can you actually know that? That's a belief. Maybe it's right, but we don't know that. Who can know that? Only God can know that, right? So, always ask that question. When you hear something on TV, in a magazine, on a website, any place where someone is talking with authority about something that supposedly happened millions of years ago, ask yourself that question. That person talking, were they there? Did they observe it? Do they know somebody who was there who observed it? Can they repeat the process? Because if the answers are no, it's a belief. It's just a belief. It's not a scientific fact. You don't have to believe it. All right, how many people remember this guy? I remember him. Who remembers Carl Sagan back from the 80s and 90s? He's dead now. But back when he was around, great astronomer, good scientist, he said a lot of correct things. He said a lot of correct things, very smart. But he also said things like this. He said the cosmos, meaning the universe, the physical universe, is all there is. In other words, no God, no heaven, no afterlife, none of that. The cosmos, just the physical stuff, is all that there is, all that there ever was, and all that ever will be. Now think about that statement. First of all, did he observe that? Can he repeat the process of the cosmos? Okay. Think about that, the grandiosity of that statement, okay? If I say God is and always has been and never will be, you know I'm making a religious statement. I'm telling you what I believe about God. He is and he always will be, right? That statement right there, is that a scientific proven fact or is that a belief? That is nothing but a bald-faced religious belief. That's a religious belief. You see that? It's not Christian religion, but it's atheistic humanism, right? You see it? Because atheism is a religion. It's a set of beliefs about spiritual matters based on faith. Did Carl Sagan see the beginning of the universe start? Could he see into the future when it's going to not end? Who would you have to? He's making a statement that goes way back in the past, forever into the future, and includes the entire universe. Who's the only person that can know all that? God, right? This is nothing but a religious statement. He's welcome to it. He's welcome to share it, but please understand what it is. It's not science. A scientist said it, but not everything scientists say are scientific facts. Did you catch that? Not everything scientists say are scientific facts because scientists are people like you and me. They have religious beliefs. They have political beliefs. They have other philosophies. He's welcome to them, but please understand, just because it comes out of the mouth of a scientist doesn't mean it's a scientific fact. Did you catch that? Good. All right. Let's make sure. Here's another guy. Now Carl Sagan was a pretty nice guy. This guy's not so nice. He's Lawrence Krauss. He said, so forget about Jesus. The stars died so you could be here today. Whoa, that's blasphemous. See, he believes that billions of years ago stars exploded, the stuff from the stars formed the planets, including this one, and the stuff in the planet eventually formed single-cell microbes that eventually developed into becoming bigger creatures, eventually primates, and eventually us. So over billions and billions of years, because stars exploded, you're here today. Because a star died, you're here. Thanks to the stars, right? Is that a scientific fact? Did he witness stars exploding? No. Can he repeat the process of stars exploding? So is that a proven fact, or is that just his belief? It's his belief. It's a religious belief, really, okay? It's not science. Please understand. It doesn't matter how smart the scientist is, it's not necessarily science. The modern cosmos guy believes the same thing. He says, you, me, we're all made of star stuff. Does he know that? He believes that, right? Okay. Here's what else he said. He said that this is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil Tyson said, the theory of evolution, which is today's topic, like the theory of gravity, is a scientific fact. I wish I had something to drop up here, but I don't. I don't need to demonstrate this. You understand, don't you, right? That if we wanted to test gravity, it'd be pretty easy, wouldn't it? There, did you all witness that? Let's see if we can repeat the process over here. You all witnessed that, right? I think gravity's pretty easy to test. I think you and I test it every single day without even trying. So let's see if he's right. Let's see if the theory of evolution is just as scientifically provable as the theory of gravity. In other words, can we observe it and can we repeat it? Let's see if he's right. Now, most biology textbooks teach kids that evolution is true, that humans evolved from apes. They teach that to people. I remember even being in 4th grade, there was a book in our library at the public school I was at on evolution. That's when I first heard about it. So at pretty young ages, kids are being taught that you and I have monkeys in our family tree. Maybe not specifically monkeys, but some kind of ape-like creatures. And you know who started the modern theory of evolution, right? His name is Charles Darwin. Now, what's the name of his most famous book? Yep, most people say Origin of Species. That's a very shortened version of the title. The full title is on the screen there for you. Go ahead, I'll give you a moment to read it. That, within the quotes, not just the red part, but the white and the red inside the quotes, is the full title of his book. Books these days have like 1-word, 2-word titles. That's the full title of his book. Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Human Life. Did you know that Darwin was a racist? That's a different topic for a different day. We actually have a presentation called Simple One-Sentence Solution to All Racial Tension. Different topic for a different day, but there is actually inherent racism in Darwin's theory. I don't think most evolutionists, in fact, I know most evolutionists don't believe that today. But just so you know, I want to throw that out there for you. But now, I disagree with many, many things Charles Darwin said, but there is one thing he said that I agree with, and I'm putting it on the screen for you right now. He said, by my theory, and he means the theory of evolution, innumerable, that's a big number. Everybody say innumerable. That's a number so big, so high, you can't even count it. Transitional forms must have existed. Now, let's make sure we know what he's talking about. Here's a transitional form, okay? You've all seen the chart before, right? Where you have the monkey on the far left, right? Pure primate, pure monkey or ape, all the way up to modern man on the far right, okay? So everything in between the monkey and the man is a transitional form, something that's partway in the evolutionary process. That's a transitional form. So anything in the middle, between pure monkey, pure man, transitional form. Got it? Let's go back to what he was saying. Innumerable transitional forms must have existed. So far, 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 far more than are on this chart. In other words, if you had a complete chart, it would stretch beyond this room, for miles and miles in both directions. More creatures in the middle between man and monkey than you can count. That's what he's saying. So Darwin said, far more than we can count. They must have existed. And then he goes on to ask the question. Darwin says, why do we not find them embedded in countless numbers? How many numbers? More than you can count in the crust of the earth. I think that's a fair question, don't you? We find lots of dinosaur bones, don't we? Lots and lots of dinosaurs. They found over 1,000 dinosaur bones at one big site in Montana. We have thousands and thousands of dinosaur bones. We should have countless bones from these transition creatures, right? All this stuff in between monkeys and people. Where are the bones? That's a great question. So he was asking the question. I think we should ask the question. Everybody say, where are all the bones? That's a great question for an evolutionist, because if this theory is true, we need to observe the evidence, right? So let's look for the evidence. Now, Darwin said that he wrote that famous book back in 1859, and the 1860s went by. Not too many bones, bones aren't being found. 1870s, few bones, maybe a tooth here and half of a jawbone there. Nothing that would be absolute proof of evolution. Just, is this a monkey? Is this a person? We don't really know. But basically, absolutely no complete skeletons. Nothing that really showed anything. So 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, they're getting nothing. Finally, in 1912, they found something. They found Piltdown Man in Sussex, England. So by now, Darwin's theory is over 40 years old, over 50 years old, and they finally found something, and they're very, very excited. Now, so we have a skull here, right, from Piltdown Man. The truth is, they didn't find a complete skeleton. They did not even find a complete skull. You know what they found? They found a jaw, they found a couple of teeth, and they found a couple of bits of the skull, I guess, maybe. But they found Piltdown Man, and they were all very, very excited, because evolutionists, they put this in the New York Times. They said, look at that, Darwin theory is proved true, 1912. New York Times is very, very excited about that. And then they did some research 40 years later on the parts, and guess what they found out? They found out that after intensive study, they found out that the modern human skull was actually no more than 600 years old. So it was the skull of a guy who lived back in the 1400s. Furthermore, worse yet, the jaw and the teeth were not from a person. They were from a what? An orangutan. And to make it even worse, the tooth was from a chimpanzee. So some character had combined these three, part of a man, part of an orangutan, part of a chimp, put them together to make them look like an evolutionary transition species. And after they had the technology to do it, they couldn't do it in 1912, but about 40 years later, they had the technology to really analyze this, and they found out that with microscopic testing, that somebody had taken a file to the teeth to file them down, making them look more ape-like rather than human-like. That's what some character did, we never found out who it was, to make Piltdown Man a transition species and to convince people evolution is true. They had not found anything in 50 years, so somebody had to make something up. And to this day, and this is not just a creationist thing, this evolutionists all agree this was a hoax, sorry, they threw it out. So we can't use Piltdown Man anymore. So after 50 years of evolution, a great question for and by the way, you thought fake news was just a modern thing, didn't you? Yeah. New York Times been at it for over 100 years. Anyway, so longer than that. So yeah, that was 110 years ago, wasn't it? So a great question still to ask an evolutionist is what? Where are all the bones? Well, they found some. I think it was 1920, early 1920s, they found Nebraska Man. Guess where they found Nebraska Man? You guys have studied this, haven't you? You're right, it was in Nebraska. And Nebraska Man was a big, big deal. They had pictures of Nebraska Man with his wife, with his kids, outside of a cave. They had pictures of this guy, right? They put some publication in England had those pictures. They talked about Nebraska Man in schools, so much so they actually used Nebraska Man as evidence in the so-called Scopes monkey trial. Remember that back in the 1920s? That was the landmark case where the court decided that it was appropriate to teach evolution in schools. That happened literally 100 years ago in the 1920s. They used Nebraska Man as evidence to say, look, evolution's true. We should teach it to kids in school. And they got their way. They won that case. They kept on. But here's the reality about Nebraska Man. They didn't find a complete skeleton. They didn't find half a skeleton. They didn't find 1/4 of a skeleton. They did not even find an entire skull. You know what they actually found in Nebraska Man? One tooth. One tooth. Now, you got to be a fantastic police sketch artist to be able to draw a picture of a guy having just only had his tooth. You got to be a really, really good sketch artist to be able to draw a picture of a guy's wife after just finding one of his teeth. I mean, these people are brilliant detectives. And they kept digging to find more. We got to find more. And they found more teeth. And once they found more teeth, they figured out, oops, this wasn't actually a transition species. Oops, this wasn't even a normal man. Oops, this wasn't even a monkey. You know what this Nebraska man actually was? An extinct pig. They used this as court evidence to get evolution taught in schools. Are you beginning to see how unscientific this is? Because if this evolution is a scientific fact, Darwin said we should be finding how many bones in the ground? Innumerable. They found a tooth that belonged to a pig. What's a great question for an evolutionist? Where are all the bones? Come on, guys, convince us of this. Okay, so it's been over 100 years since Darwin's theory came out. In 1974, finally somebody found some bones. Dr. Donald Johanson discovers a fossil in Ethiopia dubbed Australopithecus afarensis, which means southern ape, by the way. You want to sound intelligent? Everybody say Australopithecus. If you do it with a British accent, it's even better. Say Australopithecus. Best British accent, say afarensis. You all sound very intelligent. But most people just call her Lucy. So we'll stick with that. All right. So she simply became called Lucy, this southern ape they found. Okay. So now I was in 9th grade. How many of you, anybody back there in 9th grade? No? Okay. Best 3 years of my life when I was in 9th grade. So, no, I'm just kidding. Actually, it was a rough time. I still wasn't a Christian yet at that time. It was probably my worst year, honestly, ever. But I was in 9th grade when I first heard about Lucy. And my history teacher, this is a world history class, beginning of the year, and so we're talking about the beginnings of human history, right? So she talked about Lucy, our common ancestor. I, unlike you, did not know the difference between fact and belief when I was sitting in that 9th grade history class. But my teacher told me that Lucy, this ape creature, was our common human ancestor. See a placard right there in the background. This is Lucy in some museum, I guess. They have a statue of her, and it says, "The human story begins with Lucy." Well, I saw other pictures of Lucy eventually down the road with very human-looking eyes. I did not know the difference between fact and belief. I saw pictures of Lucy with human-looking eyes and a nice smile. I saw text. I mean, I don't know if I saw all these, but came out for people to see textbooks and magazines showing pictures of Lucy and her family, you know, looking very motherly, looking off in the distance as she's holding her child there. I did not know the difference between fact and belief. And news articles came out saying that she was one of the most important fossils ever discovered. Now, just so you know, there are millions of fossils in the world. They found thousands and thousands just of dinosaur fossils. 95+% are marine invertebrates, right? Yeah, she just said there are probably fossils in the parking lot out here. They are very, very, not of huge dinosaurs, but of marine invertebrates, and that's what most fossils are. Shells, plant, ferns. So fossils are extremely abundant. You can find fossils if you look outside today. So millions upon millions upon millions of fossils. But this one of the most important ever discovered. So this is a big deal. Big deal, okay? So eventually I got to see the real Lucy. Would you like to see Lucy? Because I brought her with me here today. Nobody said yes. This is disturbing. Yes. Okay. I also brought my lunch because Pastor said I could talk as long as I wanted to. I'm just kidding. He didn't really say that. But I will show you why I brought my lunch, because I brought my lunch, but where did I put Lucy? Oh, I know where she is. She's right here. Yep, that's it. Lucy fits comfortably in my brown paper bag lunch sack. No, I'm not joking. What you're looking at on this table is a plaster of Paris exact replica, piece by piece, bone for bone, precise replica of the real Lucy. The real Lucy is on the screen right there. That skeleton is in a museum in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is where they found her. And you're looking at everything they found right there. Lucy is nothing more than 47 monkey bones. I'm not joking. That is it. All those pictures, all those sculptures, all those greatest fossil ever found, all that stuff in the textbooks, all of that, you're looking at the whole thing right there. 47 monkey bones. You can look at this exact replica. It'll be at our table after the presentation if you'd like to look at it. By the way, I don't recommend taking Lucy out to lunch. She's very bony. Now, not to be confused by the colors, the white one we have is a replica. The real one you're looking at on the screen, the real parts are brown, okay? So what this picture of the skull is showing is what parts they actually found and what parts they haven't found, but that they're imagining. So when it comes to the skull and the jawbone, the brown is what they found. That's a fact. That's a scientific fact because it's observable. What does that make the white part? What's the B word? Belief. Some people believe that's what the rest of her looked like. Do they know that? No, they don't know that. They think that. Maybe they're right. We don't know. The brown is what they found. The size and shape of the skull bones are similar to that of a chimpanzee, or more likely maybe a modern-day bonobo. In all likelihood, it's an ape that is now extinct. We don't have an exact one like that around us today, but similar to an African bonobo. Her imagined human appearance is, as you just pointed out, just belief. Now, judging by the bones we have, and we have less than half of the skeleton, but judging by the ones that we do have, her body appeared to be about 3.5 feet tall. All of you adults in the room who are only 3.5 feet tall, raise your hand. Okay. Well, I know some people, some adults are. Most adults tend to be more in the 5 foot something range, right? Chimpanzees are 3.5 feet tall, just saying. Now, the few finger bones that we found are curved like a chimpanzee's. They're good for climbing trees. This is a chimp hand on the left. That's a human hand on the right. There are similarities because we have a similar creator. We have the same creator. The same artist made us both, and he likes to do things a certain way, right? He likes to give creatures 2 eyes, 1 mouth, 2 arms. He likes to do that, right? So of course there are similarities. But if I see 2 drawings by the same artist, I don't conclude that one drawing came out of the other one. If they look alike, I assume it's the same artist, right? Well, we have the same artist too. Humans and chimpanzees do. But you notice there's also differences. The chimp's fingers are good for climbing trees, and the human fingers are good for texting on our phones, because that's why God made our fingers. If you don't believe that, ask a teenager. Now, the wrist bones indicate that she walked on her knuckles. We know that, well, we think that. We don't know that. We think that because there are locking mechanisms in her wrists that allow her to knuckle walk. If you and I knuckle walk for a day, we'll have bloody knuckles and maybe even broken wrists because ours are not made to do that. She did have that locking mechanism, so therefore she probably was a knuckle walker, not an upright human walker. They never found any kneecaps. I'm sure she had them. They never found any feet. I'm sure she had them. But we don't know what they look like because we don't have the facts. We have nothing to observe. And yet, even though we don't know that she walked upright because we don't have the feet, well, look what they do. They draw pictures of her walking upright with human-looking feet. Darwin made this theory back in 1859. Over 150 years. This is the best they've got. How many bones did Darwin say should be in the ground? Innumerable. In that time, they have found thousands of dinosaur bones and plenty of other fossils. Where are all the bones? If you want us to believe this, show us the facts. We have less than 40, this is the we have, and we have less than 40% of the skeleton. There is far more that we don't know about Lucy than what we actually do know. So think about science versus belief, right? They don't even know what gender, quote, she was. More recently, they've come out to realize, no, we don't really know if she was Lucy. Maybe she was Lucas. Maybe she's Lucifer. We don't know. You know, here's the headline, Lucy or Brucey. It can be tricky to tell the sex of fossil ancestors. You know, I'm not a biologist, but determining the gender of something seems like a pretty basic knowledge, don't you think? I realize for some people in Hollywood these days, it's not basic knowledge. They're confused. But for most people, 3 years old and above, knowing whether you're a boy or a girl, that's pretty basic knowledge, right? And if they don't even know that, how much do they really know, right? Most of this thing about evolution is just based on belief, belief, belief. Everybody say belief. Because for something to be a scientific fact, it has to be what two things? What's the O word? What's the R word? Right, okay? We've never observed evolution. We certainly can't repeat the process if it did happen. By the way, I feel like you need to say evolution and adaptation are not the same thing. When you go out in the sun for a day and don't wear sunscreen, what happens to your skin? Yeah, assuming you don't get burned, what happens to it? It darkens, right? You get tan. That's an example of adaptation. If you walk around barefoot for a long time on hard surfaces, your feet will callous. That's adaptation. You're adapting to your environment. But you're not going to turn into another species. That would be evolution. So we observe adaptation, and we creationists believe in adaptation, okay? It happens, right? Our skin turns darker when we go in the sun. Our feet callous. There's plenty of examples of adaptation where a species will change